Today on The Big Story, Wuhan virus infections spike as China confirms human-to-human transmission. Is Wuhan virus on the scale of SARS? Global leaders gather in Davos for the annual World Economic Forum to tackle global challenges. Bad manners at Sembawang Hot Spring Park after only a month of opening. It's Tuesday here in Singapore. You're watching The Big Story, where we will discuss the hottest topic of the day and explain why it matters. I'm Haryanto Diman, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. A fourth death in China due to the Sars-like Wuhan virus has been confirmed. More than 200 people have been reported to be infected in China. And Beijing has confirmed the worst fears of authorities around the world. This means it will spread more quickly and widely. The World Health Organization said it will hold an emergency meeting this week to discuss whether to declare the outbreak a public health emergency of international concern. Is the Wuhan virus on the scale of SARS? Now, to tell us more, we have an expert on this virus from Bioinformatics Institute A-Star, Dr. Sebastian Morris-Straw. Welcome, Dr. Sebastian.
Hello.
Now, Doctor, if you could just share with us, firstly, briefly, elaborate on your role with regard to the research on the Wuhan virus.
So, in my role in the A-Star Bioinformatics Institute is computation analysis, and we have a long experience in analyzing virus genome sequences. In this regard, we have been working with the influenza global surveillance from the WHO and colleagues, including a sharing platform called GIS8. In this sharing platform also is the one where the Chinese labs decided to share their genome sequences.
Right.
And to support these efforts of the open sharing of the sequences through the GIS8 platform, we help with computation analysis. Okay. And our role is to try to derive quick characteristics comparison to other viruses, some basic characteristics that one can see from the sequence to the structure of the virus.
Right. So, Doctor, so you're saying is that from the genome sequence, you'll be able to tell if this virus is similar to other viruses out there?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. And, from the research that you have done so far with regard to the virus, what do we know or not know about the Wuhan virus?
There are, of course, many things we do not know, and also through the genome analysis we can only say a few limited things. But for example, what is known by comparing the genomes to previous viruses is that we know that it is indeed from the SARS family. There would be several other coronaviruses, common cold viruses in other families, and there is also the MERS virus. And although this virus is closely related to SARS at the genome, there are many differences. And it's so different that there are also other bad coronaviruses in between this if we compare them and structure them in a phylogenetic tree. This is the way we compare the genomes of the virus.
Right. Doctor, if you could just explain a bit more, from the genome sequence, would we be able to say or tell if one virus is more serious or deadly compared to another virus?
One cannot say that so easily, and in particular we can compare some characteristics of the virus, and we can even go from the sequence to the structure. For example, what is shown on screen just before was the spike glycoprotein. This is one of the surface proteins of the virus. What you could see with the gray and red colors was just the model of it. On the right side, from the shared by the China CDC, is the actual electron micrograph of the virus. And you see the virus, you can imagine, is a ball and has those spikes out.
Yeah.
So these spikes on top are what encounter the human host. Right. And so characteristics and changes on the surface of the virus will determine how good or well it can spread between humans or from animal to human, or not at all from human to human.
Right.
However, because this virus is so different from the SARS virus, just based on the sequence, one cannot easily predict that. So one needs to wait until experimental tests confirm that, and especially clinical assessment of the severity of the virus cannot be made purely based on the sequence.
Right. And You mentioned regarding the SARS virus, and you mentioned that, while it belongs to the same category, they are quite different as well, right? With that said, Doctor, is the Wuhan virus the next SARS?
SARS, in the terminology of being related to the virus family, yes, but similar, like you may have similarities, let's say, between dogs and cats, but you clearly know that they are different.
Yeah.
And it's not so easy to say that it has the properties of SARS. We just know that genetically it belongs to the family of the virus. Right. And we know from the genomic distance that it has been several years separate from SARS in terms of genomic divergence.
Right. Well, thank you so much again, Dr. Sebastian, for coming on to the show to share a bit more on the virus, right, on the Wuhan virus. Now, of course, we have right here Dr. Sebastian from Bioinformatics Institute from A*STAR to tell us more about the Wuhan virus. Of course, for those of you who are watching us, stay up to date with the latest on the Wuhan virus on our website, straitstimes.com. Moving on to our second segment, global leaders gather in Davos starting today for the annual World Economic Forum. Now, the forum involves the who's who in government, industry and civil society, where they will exchange views on geopolitical developments and discuss new approaches to address evolving global challenges. Some of the key issues to look out for: climate change and how the tech revolution will reshape ASEAN region, among others. The 50th edition of the World Economic Forum will be attended by, among others, United States President Donald Trump, 17-year-old Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg, and Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. PM Lee will speak at a dialogue on Wednesday on the future of smart nations, leadership in the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and how technology will reshape the ASEAN region. He will also be a panelist in a live-streamed media session later that day on how the multilateral system should adapt to emerging actors, interests and ideas. We have news editor Zakir Hussain, who is in Davos right now, cold Davos, live on Skype to tell us more. Hi, Zak.
Hi.
How's the weather right there? You're all bundled up. Is it really cold right there?
Yep, it's sub-zero, so it's about -6 degrees. It's actually a little warmer than it was in previous years, but the annual gathering happens this time of the year normally.
Right. So, Zak, if you could tell us, right, this year's WEF is the 50th edition. What's so special about this meeting, and what are the key areas for this year?
Yeah, I think if I can go back a bit to 1971, and when the founder of the WEF, Klaus Schwab, first decided to gather some of the people, movers and shakers, to meet in this mountainous town. They didn't really have lofty ambitions. They just wanted to work together, bring people from different groups together to see how they could solve some of the pressing problems facing the world. It was a very different landscape then. But the threat of the Cold War and all was very real then. 50 years on, we're in the midst of a US-China trade war, although there is some reprieve. There's a sort of global emergency over the climate. And in many societies, especially over the past year, you saw quite widespread protests against inequality and people feeling that, the rich were keeping all the money to themselves and not distributing it in a fair enough manner. So this year's meeting is like every other year, except there's a special emphasis on the fact that maybe at 50, the WEF should take stock of what it's achieved. But also, I think, try and find renewed momentum to, resolve some of these challenges in a more focused and sustainable way. And I think this year's meeting, you'll see a shift. I think there's a lot of emphasis on stakeholder capitalism.
Right.
Basically meaning that businesses, can no longer just serve the interests of shareholders and ignore the communities they operate in, ignore the public at large, and so on. And so businesses need to have a greater sense of responsibility, not just to society, but also to the environment. And I think one signal of the WEF success is that, yes, there are the annual small-scale protests and so on. But even environmentalists and activists like Greta Thunberg, the 16-year-old schoolgirl who kind of led many of the movements over the past year, she's decided to come to Davos and send a message to many of the gathered world leaders. And I hope, and I think many people hope, they will be listening to the need to do something on the climate.
Yeah. Now, Zak, of course, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong is there as well. And if you could share with us, what is Singapore's involvement in this global forum?
I think Singapore leaders have made it a point to be at Davos in some capacity or other every year. The late Mr. Lee Kuan Yew got to know Mr. Klaus Schwab very well as well. And this year, PM's attending for only his third time. He attended in 2008 and 2012 as PM. He's also speaking on, he has a special one-on-one conversation with the WF president. He's also taking part on a panel on multilateralism. And I think Singapore feels that, at a time when, there's a risk of the world kind of fragmenting and countries wanting to go their own way, especially larger countries, it's important for all players, not just the countries large and small, but also companies and businesses to come and work together and find some way of, jointly moving forward to tackle some of the larger problems society faces.
Right.
And one area is technology. With the widespread use of artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and the debate over 5G systems. In a way, Singapore does, and I think Singapore officials want to have a presence at the table and also help shape some of the debate on these issues, which I think are going to affect society in the next 3 to 5 years in quite significant ways.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Azab, for coming on to the show to share with us more with regard to the forum. And of course, have fun at Davos and do stay safe. Yeah, now for more updates on the World Economic Forum, you can visit our website at straitstimes.com. Now moving on to What's Trending, where Dylan will share with us what's buzzing in the internetverse. Over to you, Dylan.
Thanks, Aranto. It's time for What's Trending. First up, do be warned that the next video contains disturbing images. Harrowing footage of animal cruelty, videos of a pig being tied up and shoved off a bungee tower in China have gone viral. Carried out by employees at Mason Red Wine Town theme park in Chongqing, the footage showed the pig being tied to a pole with all of its legs bound. Take a quick look. The distressed pig could be heard squealing as it tumbled and bounced in mid-air. Social media was quick to condemn the stunt, deeming it to be cruel and inhumane, with animal rights organizations speaking up and urging China to view public response as a wake-up call to strengthen animal laws. Moving on, Chinese New Year theft. Think these are cute? Someone else thought so too and brought them home. 9 of 16 of these young toppers used to decorate the bollards of a taxi stand at Fusionopolis 1 have been reportedly stolen last weekend. They were handmade by volunteers from Yan Bombing, Singapore. The young toppers were Chinese New Year themed, including designs like koi, rats and mandarin oranges. Police are investigating. And finally, look out! Literally off the beaten path or any path, a group of teenage boys were spotted riding their bikes in Plaza Singapura as it was closing for the night in a clip posted on Facebook. Netizens were quick to condemn the teens for pulling a stunt to get attention, with some saying that the mall needs to step up its security as this could hurt other shoppers. Investigations are ongoing. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. I'm Dylan Ang and that's all we have for What's Trending today. If you've seen a story you want to share, tell us on Straits Times Facebook page.
Thank you, Dylan, for the update. Moving on to our last segment. As tempting as it is to get that onsen experience, no bathing or swimming is allowed at Sembawang Hot Spring Park. Barely a month since the park reopened, footage of people's inappropriate behavior has circulated online. The National Parks Board, or NParks, is making the rules clearer for people on how to behave. Circulating online, footage of people's inappropriate behavior at the Sembawang Hot Spring Park. This includes people soaking their entire bodies in the communal foot bath and getting domestic workers to wash their feet. The National Parks Board, or NParks, has deployed additional staff and signs with guidelines at the park to advise users on proper behaviour. According to infectious diseases experts, besides being considerate, safety and cleanliness are also important, as there have been reports of infectious diseases being transmitted at various hot springs. Now to tell us more, we have journalist Timothy Goh. Welcome, Tim. Tim, NParks had also received feedbacks on incidents of misconduct at the park. What are some of these misconduct? What shouldn't people do at the park?
Well, I think the most obvious one that we've all seen online is this uncle soaking his entire body in the cascading pool. So that pool is only meant for feet. You're not supposed to put your whole body in. Other less common ones are people cooking their eggs in the cascading pool, which is again meant for feet.
Yeah.
And also some park users, taking water from the hot spring and then pouring it onto the plants nearby. Yeah.
Right. And having said that, of course, then what are the proper ways to use the facilities, Tim, especially regarding the foot dipping? Because I think people are a bit confused.
Yes.
Can I dip my feet in the pool or not? Because there have been pictures and videos online of people dipping their feet in the pool.
Yes, so there are specific places where you can dip your feet into the pool. That's in the cascading pool area, where there are 4 different pools flowing into each other. Aside from that, you shouldn't dip your feet into like the water collection point, for example. And you should never submerge your entire body into the pool.
Right.
If you want to cook eggs, there's a specific water collection point for that as well, and you can cook your eggs over there, but not in the same water where you're washing your feet.
Of course not. Yeah, I think that would be quite...
Yes. It's surprising that you have to tell people, but yes.
I guess, But I guess, people probably just a little confused as to how to use the facilities. That's it, because you mentioned regarding the different pools in the area as well. And, people have wondered as well, is the water recycled? What is the cleaning regime or the cleaning mechanism behind these hot springs?
So there is a cleaning regime in place, and they do step it up more frequently when there are more visitors. But the water itself is not recycled, so park users can rest assured. Once it flows down to the lowest tier of the pools, it just flows into the drains and it's not recycled after.
Right, so it's always a fresh batch of water. And of course, being considerate users aside, you also spoke to an infectious diseases expert on the importance of cleanliness at hot springs. And he mentioned some very, scary thoughts. Could you explain more on that?
Yeah, you'd be surprised that there's actually like quite a number of bacteria and amoeba and various organisms that have been found lurking in hot springs, and they can survive the higher temperatures of the springs. One of them is, this amoeba that basically crawls up your nose and gets into your brain and can cause brain infections. So if anything, even if you're not considerate, don't put your entire head into the hot spring, because that you may get one of these crawling up your nose. Aside from that, users who don't really clean themselves beforehand or may have open wounds, if they submerge themselves in the water, this may result in heat-tolerant bacteria growing and breeding in the water and then affecting other park users, things like E. coli, for example.
I guess at the end of the day, it's really, just being considerate, and everybody wants to have a good experience. And everybody, it is a shared facility after all, right? So it's best that, we play our part to keep the place safe, clean, and friendly for everybody to use. Well, thank you so much, Tim, for coming on to share more on the good behavior or the good things or the good conduct that you need to practice while being at the hot spring. Now, for more on the story, of course, you can check it out on our Straits Times website. There we have it, our top stories for today. For more news and videos, do log on to straitstimes.com. Once again, I'm Haryanto. See you tomorrow for more stories on A Big Story.